for a tourism town, our appearance has to be seen as a key investment and not the downgrade from 5 stars to 4 stars of our gardens that has been proposed. And I can hand on heart say that in diminishing our sports facilities for children, for taking away investment in sports grounds and trails and the city itself, it makes this look like a council that doesn't care about its people or the well-being of the people who live here. An ugly town or an overgrown town is not a town that people want to visit, and it's not one that people want to live in. And it plays into the stereotype that we've heard that this is a rundown city. And questions about these proposed measures I've heard amongst my peer group, and they're young people, professional people and people that are passionate about Rotorua. So while these proposed savings may save money in the short term, I suggest that the cost of getting that back in business may actually be beyond any investment that we as the young people of Rotorua will be able to afford in the future. And in my submission, that's actually gambling with the future of this town. Now I urge you more than ever to send the right message to our community and to our manaheri to attract them to our destination over the likes of places like Tauranga, like Taupō, and to many other competing destinations, as a place to live, as a place to work, and as a place to visit. And in my submission, we should have an active recovery plan. We should be building our city up. We should be doubling down on improving our city and our region. So in my submission, we want this to be seen as the world-renowned destination it is, that's worthy of economic investment. I suggest low rates shouldn't be the measure of success. If you do that, that's at the expense of the young people and the future generations. So I'll just finish by reiterating I am proud to live in the city, and I urge you to please protect Rotorua's future. As a young person who pays rates here and wishes to raise a family here, saving rates to give away our future feels like an awful deal to me, and then one that will cost future generations. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear my submission.
Thank you, Anna. That is time. We appreciate your strong submission. Our next submitter is Megan Malcolm.
So I have a few supporting members with me.
Now, you're welcome to stand if you're comfortable. If you wish, you can grab a chair and pull it up, but it's up to you.
Who's behind me, everybody? Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. Kia ora everybody, my name is Megan Malcolm and I'm the head of the arts faculty at Rotorua Lakes High School. Bryony Edwards, who's head of photography and design at JPC. This is my 31st year in education in this town. I started teaching at Western Heights Primary and have taught intermediate art as well as secondary art for the last 20 years. And I was also the first education officer at Rotorua Museum. And so I strongly believe that all of these experiences that I've had put me in the position to see the invaluable need for this education resource in our community. I think that if we cut our education team, our students will be really adversely affected. Our stories in taonga are vitally important to us, and I think they're really key in our curriculum. We need the expert local knowledge that the education team have to help deliver this information to our students. As busy teachers, we rely on these educators to bring all that relevant information together and to connect our students to their whakapapa. Without the art educators, we lose our local art experts and access to our very own art collection. Sorry, excuse me, I'm not very well. Students will not get to see important New Zealand art, some of which Rotorua and their own iwi and hapu actually own. The new NCEA curriculum at level 1, 2 and 3 is focusing back on local, on Rotorua, on on Māori and all those local things that we haven't got at the moment. We are going to need experts in that area, so surely that's what the museum educators are going to be there for. These staff are the link to the collections and the taonga for us as educators. The staff arrange programs at present alongside us art teachers, so our students back here get to see real artworks, our own Rotorua resources and treasures. For any of you that have been to an art gallery or a museum, you'll know that nothing compares to actually seeing the real thing. How will my students back here get to see the taonga that is owned by their own family, by Te Arawa, without art educators to coordinate that and deliver their expert knowledge? If you take away the art educators, you will be putting our high school students at a real disadvantage. And I know I speak for the students that are behind me and many more students at our school who are absolutely horrified that this was going to happen. Compared to the other provincial areas, if we take this away, our students then become seriously disadvantaged. Okay, so I'm just going to sneak Eva in.
Without art educators, we can't visit the touring Top Art Show. This Top Art Show is a display of the very best NCEA portfolios from previous Year 13 submissions. Myself and the other students in my painting class need to see the art of our peers so we can be inspired, and therefore local art schools prioritize this as an essential trip. My teacher has been bringing students to this trip for over 10 years. We are estimating that around 5 schools, 2 classes per school, use the free bus and the education service. So you can see that our art teachers from here value this service greatly. Without the education program and the free bus, many schools will find that they can't afford to come. I know for sure that will be us. And this means that some students who are financially disadvantaged won't get this opportunity to see exemplars of excellence.
So in the years that we've had COVID, we didn't have a top art exhibition at the library or museum, wherever it was held. And what my staff and I have noticed is that there was less divergent thinking, there was less exemplars available for them to look at, and less awareness of what the top excellence looked like. They just couldn't see online what they saw in person. So no top art during COVID, without a doubt, has influenced the decline in our grades at level 3. So if we don't have art educators, we don't have top art. If we don't have top art, our students will be disadvantaged grades-wise as well as generally, really. Kaya, do you want to have a chat? There's lovely Kaya.
With no museum art staff means that we won't be able to exhibit our art. Recently, we were offered the chance to exhibit our art on the second level of the library, and with that opportunity, we were able to showcase our work and also learn how to exhibit what we had made and created.
So that was all coordinated by the education staff. Look, finally, I do believe that if we don't have art educators or even museum educators in general, you put our tamariki at a disadvantage compared to the other areas in the North Island and nationally, in fact. If you live in Tauranga, students have access to a number of top galleries as well as an education team. If you live in a big city, there are multiple resources that offer the LEOTC contracts. Considering our museum is shut, we can't get our students even to exhibitions of art or any social science exhibitions, let alone take away our education staff who are our only link to our collections at present. Some of our students have those resources. They can travel, they can go and look at exhibitions in other places, but a significant and increasingly significant amount of students whose families cannot afford to get them there will be disadvantaged by not being able to see good, high quality work. So I do ask that you seriously reconsider, and I ask that you retain the education team in its entirety, because I think if you let go of it, you're actually going to hurt the people that you're trying to help, which are the future of our city. Ryan, do you want to add anything quickly?
You've just got 30 seconds left if you want to wrap up.
Would any of you like to say anything? They're all nervous.
In 30 seconds, just to reiterate about the changes that we're having in the national curriculum. There's a huge emphasis to go into understanding and for us to teach local curriculum. And the museum education team are for us our direct connection for something that we are required to do on a national level. And we recently went to a jumbo day with art teachers from all around the whole region, and the teachers who are leading the way were the ones who are working closely with our local museum, and they were a key link in something that's happening on a really big stage for the people who are piloting the new curriculum. And without them, Yeah, so that they're showing us how it's done, but how it's done is using this resource, and without them we're going to struggle. So.
Well, to get to our collection, to develop programs, without them, there's just not going to be that link, I'm afraid. So we are seriously, really, it's a terrible move.
Well, thank you very much. I've allowed you a little bit over time because it's been fantastic to also hear from the students and have you all here to support this. Thank you very much for explaining to us how this works from a practical perspective too.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Te Taru, we've got Jude on Zoom now if you wanted to come in. Kia ora, Jude. How are you? So our next submitter, Te Tatu o Te Aroa? Yeah, Te Tatu o Te Aroa, we've got Te Taru White in person, and we also have Jude Pani connected via Zoom. Whenever you're ready.
Tēnā koe e te marae kura, me koutou hoki ngā memo te kaunihere o ngā Rotorua. Me ngā memo te hapori he hui mai nei tēnei pō, kei te miha tu ki a koutou, mihi ana ki a koe te rangatira rāweri moto whakamoe mati kareke mō tātou I tēnei rā. Neira kei te miha tu ki a koe. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here as the māngai, as a spokesperson for Tātou o Te Aroa. Jude is an observer. I noted on your program that she was going to present. I'm certainly not Jude Pani, but I shall give it my best shot. For those of you who are aware that I was the past chair of Tātou o Te Aroa for 7 years, so I have a very intimate knowledge of the workings of Tātou and the partnership, given that I was the signatory for Tātou back in December 2015 when the partnership was consecrated at Tamati Kapua at that time. The expectations of the partnership were high, and it's that focus that's really part of our submission. The fact that we are somewhat disappointed that the expectations of that partnership agreement have not been realised in the context of our participation in the construct of this particular annual plan. There are quite a few things that we believe are missing, that the value that Tātou o Te Aroa, on behalf as a mandated organisation of Te Aroa, could have contributed to the particular document and created a depth of value that otherwise we don't believe is actually there at the moment. And I just premise that as well by saying that Tātou o Te Aroa is a mandated organisation and does not consider itself as an interested party or stakeholder. It is actually in the context of partnership and extending that sort of 750 years of constant connection, and also we're here forever, not going away, and the resource base that floats around this particular community is very heavily involves Te Aroa. And so the future of this particular community needs to bring in and imbue that resource into whatever you do. So I just want to basically put that point. I know that we built a 2050 vision, a document constructed in both Te Reo Māori and Te Reo Pākehā as well, which sets out the next 30 journey for Te Aroa and for the community as a whole. When we signed that partnership agreement, it was by raising the aspects or the profile and the inputs of Te Aroa so the community will rise with it. It was all about community rising together. And so with that point, we also included in there, what does our leadership look like in Te Aroa in the context of our vision for 2050? Our future has the best leaders making and effectively implementing the best decisions about our resources to continuously achieve best outcomes for our people and the community as a whole. We lead, create and shape the corridor, partnerships and opportunities that bring about positive change on kaupapa that affects us all. So being around the table as we believe that we must be is critical to that particular situation. While we appreciate the opportunity to submit on Council's annual plan consultation 2023-24, our appreciation is limited, noting that for the first time since 2016, Council did not enable participation by Tata o Te Arawa in any workshops or committee discussions on annual plan priorities, as included in Council's consultation document. We see that as a fundamental issue around our partnership. The exclusion of Tata o Te Arawa from these processes in conflict, we believe, with the tenets of the partnership agreement that we signed in 2015. We note that the partnership agreement is under review, but at the moment we hold by the tenets of its original signing. And moreover, had we been included in these processes, we would have worked with Council to at a minimum, provide Te Arawa perspective and input into the identification of annual plan priorities for 23-24. We would have made sure that there's a depth of input into that place, not just a cursory glance, but something that was a lot deeper and meaningful for the well-being of our community. We would show recognition and provision for Te Arawa strategic priorities as outlined by the Te Arawa 2050 vision. And I quote some of them: Te tuapapa o ngā wai o Te Arawa cultural values framework. That's all the tangas that you might want to, you've mentioned in so many documents from time to time, kaitiakitanga, manaakitanga, arohatanga, wairuatanga, all of those we would have brought to the table in the greater depth. Te Ara ki kōpū, the Te Arawa climate change strategy, looking at climate with a reset around all of those values. How deep do you go in the context of considering your annual plan? And the Te Arawa Māori Order Wellbeing Compass. I noticed in recent discussions around some of the future district strategies that the wellbeing compass has well been referenced, but in terms of our tatos as developers of that with our people, we should have been around the table giving it depth and credibility in the context of the annual plan. Ensuring inclusion of Te Arawa and Mātāwaka audiences in the engagement schedule for the annual plan consultation is essential in our view. Importantly, we would have also helped Council identify potential and likely impact to Te Arawa and the community and mitigations for the same that are missing from the implications of your proposals, including in the Council's consultation document. For instance, we are concerned about the lack of consideration in the document of impacts to Te Arawa on the proposed resource management fees discount policy revocation, particularly in terms of the characteristics and restrictions unique to whenua Māori land and its development. The language used in the consultation document is so high that we are unclear if development fees, for example, on whenua Māori lands would be considered in the same way as for general lands. And likewise, I know there's lots of discussions about the rating of Māori land relative to the rating of general land as well, and all the issues imposed in that space. The broader question of well-being being removed from the annual plan without Te Tau o Te Arawa representatives in the workshops, is a broader debate in terms of cultural well-being may not have been adequately considered. We think that that is something that's very seriously missing from here. The arts and creative communities funding, removing this is not supported, and we just heard from the previous speakers around that. The government has announced, for example, and I congratulate Trevor and all the teams that have worked on this, the budget for $34 million for Matatini and funding for Matariki, and Council is chopping community funding areas of well-being for the community. That arts and creative communities funding is important to the lifeblood of this community. Take it away, and that is detrimental in our view. Stopping of the stopping of the museum educational program. Likewise, the previous speakers referenced that. We don't support that. This is another space we could have given really strong advice on the impacts of losing all the history and storytelling with the museum education program. Te Tau could have bridged a solution for it. If Council are going to give up that contract, we could have helped you triage it over to another Te Arawa provider in terms of telling that story. I have a background as a kaihautū for 6.5 years for the National Museum of New Zealand Tapapa Tongariro. I led the cultural things of that. The stories they tell are fundamental to the well-being of our country and defining the uniqueness of our country. I was well and truly connected as well when Greg McManus was a director of this museum, and the work that they've done in communicating the story of Aotearoa New Zealand as it relates to here, this community, is a powerful vehicle. And I think that taking the education programs away is not a good look. We had been part of those workshops as partnerships. We could have designed solutions would not have made such an impact on Te Arawa's consideration as well as the community at large. So we are really strong in the whole need to realign the thinking in this particular annual plan with the values that we have put into this particular Vision 2050. Can I tell you that it goes right back to our origin stories, carries the values of our ancestors forward, and how we have interpreted those values in modern day times around the half a dozen PO, which reflect social, cultural, economic, and environmental well-being. You know, and so it's a very strong pitch for us to look again at that particular issue. Our exclusion from inputting into the development of the annual plan priorities, combined with the lack of identification of implications for Te Arawa in the consultation document itself, means we cannot be anything other than concerned about all of Council's annual plan proposals. Te Arawa therefore cannot support what is proposed in the annual plan consultation document until the above issues have been resolved. Until we have that opportunity to have a conversation around what well-being really means, and what are some of the critical elements in there that we believe not only Te Arawa, but the community needs very strongly to make this community vibrant and well. As good partners to Council, however, and this is one of my closing comments, we will continue to be good partners. However, to work with Council to resolve these issues and support Council to reconcile any issues raised by Te Arawa whānui and the wider community in the consultation process. We do want to work with the community. We do want to work with the Council and continues as a respected partner until such time that changes. And really for Tātou Te Arawa is when Te Arawa says, we don't want you anymore, and because we carry their mandate. And I remind ourselves often that we are an independent body with a responsibility under the mandate of Te Arawa to do the best we can for Te Arawa, and doing the best we can for Te Arawa on matters of municipality. So on that note, I thank you. I mean, I think I had 15 minutes. I think I'm within that time frame.
It's bang on time.
I saw that 5 minutes and I was a bit scared. So on that note, Madam Chair, e te marae kura, koutou mā te mema o ngā kaurihira o ngā roto Rotorua, ko tēnei te whakaatūranga, whakaaro, kōrero o te tātou o Te Arawa, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you.
Tēnā koe te taru, ngā mihi nui mo tō kōrero me tō whakaro. Our next submitter is David Sparks.
Markway, Chair, Deputy Mayor, and Councillors. I must say it's a different experience from me sitting on this side of the table, because after my 2 terms on the Kawerau Council, I'm well used to sitting on your side of the table. I'll be fairly brief. I know you've already had a fairly detailed presentation, I imagine, from the CAB. I think it was yesterday. So I just want to follow on, if you like, from them and fill out the picture regarding their relationship with community law, which is important for you to understand. And by the way, I note that in recent media that Mayor Brown in Auckland has reversed the stance there, which was good to hear. So, of course, as CAB would have said, without council funding, it's critical to them, and I would hate to see a situation where they would have to close their doors, because their relationship with us is a very symbiotic one. They frequently refer matters to us which are not within their ambit to deal with on an ongoing basis. So particularly ACC, employment, tenancy, WINS, detailed consumer issues, and all sorts of miscellaneous things that we deal with that's not really within their rohi to deal with. So I would put it this way, that there's an element of, I suppose, selfishness on our part in supporting the CAB, because if the CAB were not able to continue, then all those people that would normally go to them would come knocking on our door. And believe you me, we're busy enough as it is, because we not only do the matters I mentioned, but also we've got a specialist Maoriland person, Marcy Rinsley, you're probably familiar with her. We're very, very busy. I think it's probably fair to say that the CAB here, I believe, are the second busiest in the country. They tell me that they get about 1,000 people a month. That isn't necessarily people that physically come through the door, of course. That could be emails through the internet and so on. And I know, because I'm married to a former CAB manager, the intensive training that their volunteers go through. So I just urge you very, very strongly to reconsider any funding cut to the CAB. I know that Mayor Brown at one stage had suggested, if that's the right word, that central government funding would be a good idea. Well, I suppose in an ideal world it would be, but in reality I don't see that happening. Traditionally, CABs have always principally relied on council funding. Sure, some of them do get extra funding from other sources, but the principal funder has always been the council. So that's my thrust to you this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Any questions? I think you've been quite clear in your, but it's fantastic to have you here as a previous councillor of Kawerau District Council, and of course thank you for your service with the Rotorua Community Law Service as well, so we appreciate that.
Right.
Thank you for your submission.
Thank you. No, right.
Our next submitter is Cheryl Hewitson. Apologies.
Kia ora koutou. I'm speaking as a teacher, a careers advisor and a long-time local resident. I have also been involved with the Museum Teacher Reference Group for over 10 years. After the 2018 consultation, Kōrero Mā Tauranga, the New Zealand public clearly stated they wanted a more inclusive education for our tamariki. Greater equity in education leads to greater equity outcomes. This represents a shift in practice for many teachers, especially those in English medium settings who are not secondary trained. The new social studies curriculum has a huge emphasis on people and place, especially local place. Rotorua Lakes Council is proposing to no longer support our schools, kaiako and tamariki with expert knowledge. Our new curriculum calls for us to reach into the community and use local knowledge. Our museum education team has over 30 years experience and expertise and local knowledge. They are also able to access local experts. The stories our team tell and hold are irreplaceable. We cannot afford to lose this valuable resource. Indeed, Ngāti Whakāui have been funding a bus for students to access the Museum Reference Group for over 13 years. The education team have been operating out of the public library since the museum closed. It is a testament to the education team that they have continued to thrive and deliver, especially when we do not have a museum. Our young people and the community need to continue to have access to resources, knowledge, and most importantly, local knowledge, identity, and culture. We need to preserve, protect, and share our heritage. I consider that the Council has been short-sighted in this particular area with it appears that there was no consultation or feasibility study done. The museum does gain some income from schools and other people coming in, and I think that those areas could be looked at and perhaps some studies done on whether they could gain more income from there. And I would just really like to say that as a teacher I have used that museum group, and they are one of our most precious taonga in this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you're comfortable, there is 2 minutes left if you wanted questions or...
No, I'm really happy with that. I could tell you that I want the gardens to stay, because I think that Rotorua needs to have our gardens looking beautiful, because our city has a really negative image. I spent yesterday with the tourism leaders going around Rotorua, and one of the things they were saying is that we need to get that image of Rotorua back up again. And we also need to look at, you know, how could we sponsor that? Is there a way of getting those gardens where Rotorua people buy a bulb or do something? You know, they're, you know, looking at more entrepreneurial ways around funding those particular areas. I'll taitoko my friends from the Rotorua Youth Hub, who do an amazing job with our young people, especially those who are at risk. Yeah, that's it. I won't do any more, so thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Our next submitter is Jennifer Murray from the Rotorua Youth Trust. Welcome.
Welcome. Kia ora te whānau, it's a bit close. Thanks very much for having us and squeezing us into the list, just as well Cheryl was short. This is also Lee Richards, who's the Employment Manager of the Youth Centre as well. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for allowing us to come here, and we've obviously submitted on 4 areas, and hopefully you've got a copy of that. We're actually only going to speak to one of the areas, and it's our point 1 on that first page. Rotorua Youth Centre has been in existence for 30 years. We are the youth one-stop shop for Rotorua for our rangatahi, and we provide support for rangatahi aged 12 to 24. Each year, and in the last 12 months, we've had 3,500 Rotorua young people that we have supported over the last 12 months. 65% of these rangatahi were Maori, and 70% live in quintile 4 and 5. So we are reaching those with the greatest need. The Rotorua Youth Centre provides youth education services, youth development programmes, youth employment services, youth mental health services, and youth health and wellbeing services. These are all obviously very key services for our rangatahi to achieve the wellbeing outcomes that Council want to achieve, but also the aspirations that our rangatahi have as well for their wellbeing in their future. Our vision of our organisation is that all Rotorua rangatahi will reach their full potential, and we believe in that strongly, and we believe that Council believes in that strongly as well. A key aspect of the work that we do is that we work in partnership with others, and we also work collectively together to create that ecosystem of support for our rangatahi to reach their full potential and reach their desires. One of the key things that we do as well is actually make sure that when we are working with our young people that we're looking at their aspirations, how we can support them to achieve their needs, and actually do needs assessments to see what support we can give them. That enables us as an organisation to reach measurable outcomes for our rangatahi from that wellbeing perspective. Now, we've got 5 minutes. I don't know if you get extra time for having an accent, because it's harder to listen to. But I'm not sure if you're aware, but you probably are, that the building, the Youth Centre building that we work from, is a council-owned building on Ngāti Whakawe land that's gifted to Council on the reserve. We have a lease with Council till 2029, so we've got another 6 years on that lease. Over the last few years, the building has been deteriorating, whereas our services have been growing. We've tripled in size in the services that we were delivering to what we were doing 5 years ago. We're definitely meeting the outcomes of our rangatahi, and one of the things that is really troubling for us is that there is no investment by Council for repairs and renewals for the building. The building is deteriorating, and we're majorly concerned if we don't actually have any investment within the building, that the building will actually deteriorate to a state where it's not actually fixable. And then where would our services be to enable us to provide the services that we have for our young people and actually provide that wraparound support? For us, we believe that, and we'd like Council to think about funding for essential repairs and renewals. Council is our landlord, and we would believe that as a key objective of the landlord is actually to support the building. One of the key things for us is that we do have a partnership agreement with Council. We don't have any dollars. We're the only partnership agreement that we have with Council that don't actually have dollars attached. And we actually really value that partnership agreement, not for the dollars, but actually for the relationship and how we can jointly achieve outcomes that Council and the Youth Centre both want to achieve together. And that is enabling our rangatahi to prosper and get the support that they often don't get elsewhere. We're a youth-centric organisation, so we actually put the youth at the centre, and key to that is what they are looking for. Many other services reject a lot of the young people that we work with or struggle to engage. We do not have a problem in engaging with the rangatahi, who are often the hard to reach. Really for us, what we would like to do is to ask Council if you can work in partnership with us as an organisation now to support us within the building with the Youth Centre, so that we can enable us in partnership with yourselves to meet the outcome for our rangatahi and actually maintain the building so that we can continue to provide our services from that building.
There's 30 seconds left.
Done.
Was there maybe one quick question? Councillor Patterson. Oh, if you're comfortable to take
Yeah, enough, right on.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, thank you very much for that very enlightening presentation. This is another learning curve for me. How do you get external funding? How do you get your funding?
Yep, so we've got about 18 different contracts across a variety of providers, so some of them are government providers. So we've got Ministry of Health, Ministry of Youth Development, Oranga Tamariki. We also have philanthropic grants, lotteries, the whole spectrum. So we've got 18 different funding streams.
But you're in our building.
But we're in your building.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
And we would be more than happy to show any of you round the building and actually show you the services, because I think one of the key things is actually seeing what we do is much easier to understand what we do rather than just hear about what we do. So we would be more than happy to invite any of you to come to visit and see what we do.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your submission.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Our next submitter is Mike Tanner from PSA. Submission is on page 23. Submitter number 11. Tēnā koe te rangatira.
Kia ora.
Nau mai hoki mai.
Tēnā koutou, nā mihi nui kia koutou. Tēnā koe, Your Worship, and greetings to the councillors. It's been a while since I've been on this side of the desk, but I'm here in my role to represent the Public Service Association, and in particular to focus on the roles that you're considering cutting within this annual plan around the museum education services and the waste minimisation. And I think also at a late date, I'm hearing there may be a research position as well. So I guess in the first instance, I'd like to ask, and just bear with me, I know what this process is like, and I also know how hard it is. There are so many factors that you're trying to weigh up at the moment, and you're giving everyone the voice to explain why they're important, and I want to explain that to you tonight. In the first instance, for us to submit properly, I think that the information provided to us is quite a high level of information. It isn't quite detailed. Now, I understand that these services only represent less than 0.4% of what you're trying to save for the council. So they don't represent that much. But actually they represent a lot in value, and I don't think that that was very clearly stated and not fully understood by those people who need to actually put their submissions to you. So I'd like to submit to you that the value of the education services, which are the two full-time and the 2 part-time staff, and the waste minimisation person, have a huge value to this city. And I think that if you dived into that value and looked at what you're doing already with those positions, so the 4 positions that are sitting in the education part of this process are partially funded quite significantly, both by iwi and also by the Ministry of Education. Now, what it was stated in the document was that somehow the Ministry of Education would cover this education process. I would have hoped that that's what you're saying, is that that's already been decided, that we don't lose the education of our local history. This is local, this isn't about the ministry, it is about education, because this is where you have a role. And I would expect that the 4 people that are working full-time and part-time in those roles have significant knowledge and connection to the rangatahi of our area. So removing those roles in anticipation that someone else is going to take them on, I think is a hard ask, and I don't think that that is a process that is well thought out for the value that it adds. 6,000 local students, 1,000 students come out of area here, just for the education services. If you're talking about the future of the city, then teaching young people about waste minimisation and the cost that it's costing us for this city is one of the most beautiful cities I've had the honour to live in. And for one reason is because there are people that understand about waste and they do something about it. This is the opportunity we have right now, medium term and long term, to ingrain that into those that are going to come after you and sit around this desk and make these decisions for a very small cost. Seriously. The other part of this question I'd like to lay with you is that by removing these positions fully, at a later date, if you decide, oh, that wasn't that good an idea, to reinstate them, the cost is huge, if you're going to do it at all. The other thing is the actual removal of these positions is got a cost of its own. It's a cost to the council for doing it. It's a cost to the council for disestablishing all that information that's not going out, and it's also a cost to those people that lose their jobs. Now, here's the kicker for me: iwi pays for the transport for the education services. In partnership with iwi, I would have hoped that in your deliberations that you consider the relationship that you have with iwi in telling the story of iwi in this region. And I would hope that iwi would have a say in determining the outcome of those 4 positions. And also in the way that we look after our whenua and our environment, and what they have a say also in that waste minimisation has been given to our rangatahi in the area. So once you finish this very long process of listening to lots of people like me, and you go at the back, and whether you pop a bottle of bubbles or have a cup of tea, I want you to remember me. And I want you to remember what I said, and I want you to go back and have a look at this service, both those services, and look at the value that they add to the city and to the young people of our city, and the cost that they take to give that value, and then look at it in the bigger picture and say, do we really want to lose something this important in a city where we actually do believe that it is important for a very minimal cost? Kia ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, nā, tēnā koutou. Katoa.
We have gone just over time, so
Wow.
we'll conclude your submission there. It was almost bang on. Yeah, but thank you very much, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your submission on behalf of PSA and also for your previous service as a mayor as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your night. I just want to make one comment. I did make a comment in my submission, and it said that 5 minutes without questions is a very short time for a democratic process. Now, I do understand you have many people, but if you make your process too short, then people will challenge the process, the democratic process around this table, around the ability for you to, 1, ask questions, and for 2, those people that follow me and have come before me to present their case. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
We have a range of people that fill it up, and we have a range of people that can't quite. So, but thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much.
Our next submitter is Jack Grace.
Kia ora ho. Romatua. Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, Worship Mayor, fellow councillors, and the Chair. Thank you for giving me this time tonight. I just want to acknowledge before I start two of my music teachers in my music career. One over here, my o rangatahi, rangatira Matua Trevor, kia ora hoa, and of course your whānau, beautiful Ngāri Ngātai, and I think yours too, me. Today I speak from two platforms, if I may please. One is a ratepayer and the other one as a artist working in the creative performing arts industry. Having these two ideals is a bit challenging at times. Part of me has some really awesome creative stuff to do, and the other side says I can't afford it because I've got rates to pay. According to the 2023 annual plan, 83% of council money or revenue comes from ratepayers. Ratepayers like me, and I guess some of us here in the room. I cringe when I check my bank statements every month and see payments being vacuumed into that 83% kitty that is the council revenue. And I get it. I get that the price to live in beautiful Rotorua, and in my case on the east side, Waikawa, Hannah's Bay, is the price that we do have to pay. And so when I read Council's annual plan report and the pānui from Council is a plan to reduce rates, I 100% support that any reason to slow rates is a good reason enough to support. To stand on my creative arts and performance platform for just a moment, it goes without saying that Rotorua is steeped in performance history. 1926, the New Zealand School of Māori Arts and Crafts Institute was founded by the late Sir Abirana Ngata. At that time, the school focused on teaching traditional Māori arts and crafts. Abirana Ngata believed that at that time that Māori craft was vital to the rejuvenation of Māori culture. May 2007, our beautiful whaia Ani Waka and the then current Prime Minister Helen Clark opened and renamed that place to Te Puia, as we know it today, and one of our landmark tourist destinations. 1955, a young local entertainer by the name of Howard Morrison was playing in rugby clubs around Rotorua, socials. Later started the Howard Morrison Quartet with his brother Laurie, cousin John, and later on board, of course, Wiwharekura and Noel Kingi. And the rest is history, as they say. These are the shoulders of the giants on which people like myself and many, many people in Rotorua stand on. And to my point, page 20 of that annual report speaks of securing commercial operations. What are they? And will they push out small local productions like the one I'm a part of with our little 8 Scott Ave musical that is just played in the big room? Not just mine, but many other small creative projects who see the Sir Howard Morrison Centre as a beautiful, purpose-built space to bring our work to. Can I suggest? How can we make the two work together? Can I suggest, for want of a word, a quota system? Or a guaranteed percentage of local production in a calendar year that guarantees no matter what commercial operation it is or how much money they bring to the venue, that we have a portion of that time in that 12-month calendar year, or whatever it is that council might deem to be proportionally appropriate. It guarantees a slice of the calendar year for little productions like ours in Rotorua, that we might keep both lots of commercial operation with lots of money and small projects like mine and many others here operating in town. Just to
30 seconds, but please continue.
When a young Howard Morrison hustled music and gigged in 1955 around Rotorua with his cousins and brothers, I doubt he would ever have thought or imagined that after a legacy and history of entertainment some 68 years later, that our rangatahi, our future performers, our hopeful and potential creators would have a place to put their talent into. I just hope that we still have that place that we can come and listen to future rangatahi like Nico Grace and chuckle at funny little stories like Eight's Got to Have the Musical. Ko motu ahau. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much, Jack. We appreciate your submission and also your experience in this too. So congratulations on a successful Eight's Got to Have.
Thank you.
Now, elected members, we do have a break in submitters. We don't have any submitters present, although some were noted down. So I just recommend that we have a short break and we will let you know when the next ones do arrive. Welcome, Fred. And for all of our submitters, you get 5 minutes. I'll give you a polite warning when you get to 30 seconds, but if you do reach 5 minutes, you'll hear the bell. If you have any time left over and you're comfortable, we can open up for questions of you.
Thank you. Fred Childens, I'm president of Lakes Football Club, and I have a couple of our committee reps here tonight as well. We are one of the largest football clubs in Rotorua, or the largest sport clubs in Rotorua. We've got 800 playing members, about 2,500 associate members in that, 74 playing teams. And we've been increasing our membership year on year. And so from last year, we've had about a 10% increase. We have, in the girls space, we've grown in the last 3 years from 2 teams to 11 teams. A big increase there. Youth community space, we've grown that from 4 to 8 teams in the last 2 years as well. So a lot of growth in the football space. One of Council's visions is to, Sports and Rec talks about outstanding places to play and a resilient community. So connecting people, and as a club we see us doing a lot of that. We're growing the club, we're training coaches, referees, developing players and people, delivering new programs and introducing competitions and the likes. But the biggest constraint for us is fields and facilities in Rotorua. We can't grow like we really want to. We don't have the fields and facilities to be able to support what we've got at the moment, to be perfectly honest. The current level of funding is not keeping pace with demand. To look at reducing funding for fields and facilities and the likes it's not keeping up with pace, and it's just going to get a lot worse for us. So from our point of view, what we want to see, I guess, is we need adequate fields and facilities. So something we can play on through the year. So we've had issues this year where our fields that we are able to use have gone into maintenance during the football season. Fields that are playing football only are in maintenance during the football season, which is not ideal. All weather pitches would be great. Artificial pitches would be awesome. We see councils and towns around us with all these facilities, artificial pitches and the likes, so that we can reduce the training load, I guess, on the grass pitches that we've got. Lit fields and spaces, so at the moment we've got 2 fields that are lit. We struggle to get all of our teams to be able to train in the evenings, which in most of these teams would want to be able to train, is having lit fields. That's a real challenge. So spaces for training and for games as well. Access to fields through the season, like I talked about, just being under maintenance and the conditions of the fields so that we can have greater number of teams playing or training on them. I know like Stadium 2, it can only handle a training load of 9.5 hours a week, I think it is, which is not a lot. That's effectively 3 nights of training on there. Hygienic and safe and equitable facilities for male and female players, so toilets and changing rooms. We've got the toilets down at Paringa Park, which all the juniors use. They haven't been upgraded for a long time. They're certainly in a fairly substandard condition, I would suggest. We've certainly talked to council about improving the facilities like that and ways that we can help with that as well. And then the other one for us is indoor facilities. So we have futsal, we deliver futsal as well. At the moment we're using likes of Girls High. We have tried using the event centre and the likes before, but the challenge with that space is it's normally for conferences and the like, so trying to have that on a regular basis is a challenge. So indoor sporting facilities is key to be able to grow that. At the moment that is super constrained, we can't grow that area. So I guess from me, the need for more funding. Current level is not enough. We certainly, in my view, we shouldn't be cutting it. We need more funding. We need better partnerships with clubs. For us, I'm sure there's ways we can tap into funding to help support spaces, help develop and improve the facilities.
30 seconds, but please carry on.
If we could come up with a space to do that, provide us with an area, we could develop that area. We just need that collaboration and partnership.
Thank you. Are you comfortable with the question?
Yeah.
Cool. Question from Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Fred. I'm familiar with the wonderful things that your club has done in just a few short years, and I'm curious as to whether the grounds at Neil Hunt Park, formerly Rotorua United, are those fields being utilised as much as they should, or?
They're being utilised. Yeah, Wairiki FC are down there, formerly Rotorua United. I understand they've got 3 teams.
3 teams, and you've got?
74 teams.
Sorry?
74 teams.
74 teams.
Including juniors, youth, senior, right through. Yeah.
And I'll take one more quick question from Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick one. I read the submission, which was great, and it did have some issues that you were talking about. You'd made approaches to council about being willing to form a partnership with, even to the point where you would pay for everything, but you were told no on many occasions. Is that true?
We haven't been able to get that tick to progress, yes.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, and you've provided us plenty of detail in your written submission as well, so we thank you very much for your submission tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
We're just bringing our next submitter in who's online. Sorry, we've got one Zoom and then we'll come to you. Welcome, Gary. Can you hear us clearly?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. We can hear you clearly as well. It's now time for your submission. We've got 5 minutes for you to make that. I just want you to know that we also have the PowerPoint slides. I'm presuming that looks like you. So is that your PowerPoint slides? Yep, we've got your PowerPoint slides here as well. Yeah. Oh, there you go. You can see it on the screen as well. You've got 5 minutes. I'll give you a brief warning at 30 seconds. And over to you.
Great, thank you. Kia ora koutou. Could we have that in full screen mode? Sorry, unfortunately I'm on holiday in Fiji. To the Mayor, Councillors, staff and the public, my name is Peter Carson. I'm a Rotorua Lakes Council rep. I live in Tauranga. I'm a regular mountain bike user of the Waka Forest. I'm a Trails Trust member and I donate $50 per year. I support the council removing the $250,000 capex for the trails for this plan. This is my next slide, please. I attended the Waka Trails Forum to seek more information about the proposal that RLC had. I learned during the meeting that RLC also gives $185,000 in trail maintenance, and it's not at risk here. Council also supplies to Waka Trails various other things like 1.25 staff members and equipment, and I'm sure that there's other things. Next slide, please. There's a lot of talk about losing riders to Queenstown. I went to Queenstown last December. You haven't lost me as a rider in the Trails Trust. What Queenstown offers is an experience that Rotorua can't, and as you can see, some of the vistas and riding styles that are there. But it's also not targeted like what Rotorua is, particularly for families. But Rotorua is not, but Rotorua is a place that I sort of call home for my local biking, and I'll always be there. But I am going back to Queenstown later in the year. And the same as I explore other mountain bike parks, as do all mountain bikers. But they always call Rotorua home, and my friends do. Next slide, please. One of the key things that hasn't been talked about is that a lot of the parks and things around Queenstown, and quite weirdly it was talked about at the meeting in Tasmania as well, is that there's fees associated with attending these parks, whereas Rotorua don't. For example, I went to Auckland to Rotorua Forest last year, paid $15, experienced a car park that was like Rotorua of the 2000s, and toilets that were worse than my flat when I was flatting as a young fellow. Next slide, please. This isn't the best photo of the Rotorua Park. I was endeavouring to take some others, but unfortunately I'm here on a holiday and couldn't get to it. What this is all about is Rotorua offers in one place what no other destination does, and that's the trip. We've got trails 1 to 6, which are family orientated, great car parking areas. We've got showers, toilets, supporting businesses, a first response, a shuttle service. Admittedly, all these aren't supplied by the RLC, but collectively as a community, that's why people come to Rotorua and will in the future. Next slide, please. We're in tough times, and it's only going to get worse. And I suggest that there's other areas with priority on the council's list of things that we're cutting before the new trails. For example, playground enhancement, creative arts or waste reduction. Next slide, please. I put a Chengdu Bard. Bard is Google's equivalent of ChatGPT. You know, we've all probably heard of artificial intelligence. And I asked it, what's 10 ideas for closing the funding gap? And this is what it came back with. This is unedited, basically. The interesting thing there is a number of those boxes have already been ticked for what the funding has been done. But there's those key ones about reducing costs, de-scoping projects, and the big elephant in the room is user fees. But more importantly is the last paragraph that it came with the bottom. And that is for everybody to work together to communicate, you know, the challenges together and not point fingers. Next slide, please. There's an ever-increasing volunteer base that's been used for, next slide. Yep, thank you. There's an ever-increasing volunteer base for building or reinstating tracks, as recently demonstrated in some track constructions in the forest. I'll also point out that the Trust's strategic plan states priority is the maintenance of the existing trail network. And the thing to remember is in the past, the new money has been acquired to build new tracks. For example, the Eagle versus Shark, which was voted in 21 as the best track in the forest. A large part of that was from community funding. Next slide, please.
Gary, you do have 30 seconds left, but please carry on.
Thank you. Last slide. The Waka Forest Trail in New Zealand is not just about the trails. It's about what it brings off. It's not just houses, it's about people as well. But the 250,000 is not granted. It tells us that visitors are still going to come despite some people doing and boom. And I guarantee you the sun's still going to rise. Next slide, please. And thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. That is the 5 minutes up, but we really appreciate you taking the time to make your submission. While on holiday, we hope that you enjoy the rest of that, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next submitter is Dr. Stuart Coulson.
Now, to advance these slides, do I just use the big button in the middle of the...
Dr. Stuart Coulson, and we are on page 40 of our submitters, submitter number 18.
Thank you. Your Worship, councillors, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. You'll appreciate that I have two requests of you. The first is that you support the Lake Tarawera Ratepayers Association in their request that the Tarawera sewage reticulation be maintained and continue as a priority activity, and that the heavy impact on the ratepayers of this scheme's increased capital cost resulting from its 10-year delay be moderated by you, contributing your contribution to at least 50%. But beyond that, and I'll say being involved in the share of such a scheme does focus the mind, and my second request is that I ask of you, why is it that your costs, and so your charges, and generally those of local government across the country, remorselessly increase year on year when those of our export manufacturers don't? And I suggest that such a comparison is relevant as you both manage complex, capital-intensive operations that do have some similarities. Oh, and I'm forgetting to give you my slides. So that was my question. But I illustrate my question here with this graph, which is based on the presumption that prices are a reflection of operational costs. And this graph compares, as you'll see, the percent increase in the rates that you charge me on my property at Spencer Road over the 18 years from 2005 till now, relative to the variation in the price received by one of our central North Island pulp mills for the delivery of its product into Asian markets. And in the case of the pulp producer, the prices it received moved within the green band, about a long-run mean that has barely increased over this time. So your charges have virtually doubled in this period, presumably because everything you do costs more. That we've come to understand. But the pulp prices have only moved minimally. And this stability in the mill's received prices over these 18 years has certainly focused their mind and required it to continuously find new and imaginative ways to keep its production costs under its delivered costs. And I suggest it behoves you as our council to understand and implement what the private sector knows and does. Now, quite what the differences between your cultures are requires a rather more serious conversation. What I do know is the private sector works very hard to minimise expensive contract variation and to reduce the contract price of competitive tenders. And an important element is that those involved do have skin in the game. They know that allowing excessive pricing of the contracts they accept threatens the viability of their employer and hence their own livelihood. So rather quickly, my second request, and rather from left field I sense in terms of what you've been listening to, is that in addition to the Stage 2 contract for the Tarawera sewage reticulation, you set up a secondary parallel contract to contribute a private sector perspective to the project management. And the remuneration for the secondary contract should be proportional to the savings achieved. Now, having made those requests, I should introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I'm a lifelong Rotorua resident. My experience has been as a chemical engineer in the capital and technology-intensive national and international forest and paper industries, and I've been recognised for contributing transformational change in the way the world makes paper. Personally, my family history is documented from 1270, so we've been around a while and seen a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have 1 minute left if there are any questions. I did have a quick question on in your written submission as well. You mentioned about manage all remaining contracts for delivery of the scheme in a transparent and innovative manner. Were there any suggestions on how we could improve specifically on that? Or that's a general comment we should take on board?
I think it's a general comment. I'm at the end of the line. I do hear what conversations are held along Spencer Road. I think, well, there's a very deep concern, as you do know, once you become part of a big project. You really feel that you want to make certain that it's, the costs have been worked as hard as they can be. And we do know that you've gone in different directions with your relationships with the sector.
Thank you.
But mainly, I think the big one is how on earth do we get this private sector perspective to rehaul some of these costs. And I think it's just tragic as a country. We have found ourselves in a situation where we are less competitive and less productive than Turkey. We would have ridiculed such a suggestion once, but we have drifted into this situation, and we have the ability to pull ourselves back. But whether we have the aspiration, I just don't. I hope it's there. I love that we could find it, and I don't see why we couldn't.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart. That is the time now, but we appreciate your written and your verbal submission this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next submitter is David Crowley. Welcome, David.
Well, thank you. I feel like I might have jumped the queue, but thanks very much for allowing me to come along tonight and for all being here and all looking so awake. It's quite remarkable, really. Some of you will know that I'm a Rotorua Trails Trust trustee, but I'm not here in that capacity tonight. I'm here to express my own views, both as, a resident ratepayer, but also as a kind of a long-time volunteer working on trails in the forest. Building trails. So as a resident, I applaud, the council's move to try and keep rates under control and to, fulfil your moral obligation to make sure that the rates that you're gathering are being spent, in the benefit of the people that you're taking the rates from. So I support that general direction. And my other capacity, as a trail volunteer and trail builder, I'm here to point out that the trail network in the forest suffers greatly from the increased use that it gets. The benefits that come to Rotorua from having 150,000 people a year come to Rotorua expressly to use the forest trail network, wears the trails out much more than it has in the past, and you just can't expect a volunteer group and a volunteer network to maintain the level of trail network that has attracted people to Rotorua. The pleasure that people get from riding the trails suffers as the trails deteriorate, and additional wear will deteriorate the trails. The Peterson report, pointed out that there's $100 million a year that comes to Rotorua for people that expressly come to Rotorua to use the trails. And while I would agree that maybe it shouldn't be the people of Rotorua that are funding that, the general residents, potentially shouldn't be funding a trail network to do that. And I, as a volunteer trail worker, I don't feel when I'm out there in the rain working away that visitors who are coming and riding the trail network, that my efforts really should be supporting that either. I'm pointing out money is required, additional money is required to maintain a level of trail network that's going to attract people to Rotorua. The Peterson report suggested that use could go up 50% with international travel coming up by 2026. So if you've got 800 jobs now based on people coming, that's another 400 jobs. If you've got $100 million coming into the town because of that, that's an extra $50 million. And what I'm suggesting to you is that is at risk if those people choose to go to other places instead. You've got direct flights from America to Christchurch, people going to Queenstown. They've got a fantastic trail network down there. I'm saying that taking a year off is not a good idea. This is a time of resurgence and recovery, and losing that money now could damage our reputation in a bad way. So who should pay for that money? Where would that money come from if it's not from the resident ratepayers? Well, I'd suggest that you're already collecting that money with rates that you're taking from businesses. The people who are benefiting from that $100 million spend are people that run accommodation, people that have Airbnbs, people who you are taking 3 times the rate off already. And I would suggest to you that you've got a moral obligation to spend the money that you're taking off those people on an asset that benefits them, which, to my view, is the forest.
Very well put. You do have a minute and a half. Were you comfortable with any questions?
I'm comfortable with questions.
Okay.
I'm sorry I don't have slides.
No, that's fine. You've made it very clear, and also thank you for the solutions in your written submission as well. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great points. One thing, did you touch, I've read your submission, did you touch on sponsorship?
Yes, Sponsorship from, well, I may have done. To be honest, I've forgotten what I wrote in my submission.
So we've heard through a number of submitters that sponsorship is a possibility, but
yes,
there are concerns about actually getting it across the line because of pushback from the mana whenua. But my understanding is if that was ring-fenced for maintaining the trails, then they would not have a disagreement with that. Is that how you've heard?
I think there's further work that can be done in looking at the sponsorship line of things. You know, you've got a volunteer organisation that's trying to organise that, and I definitely, I could put my Trails Trust hat back on for a moment and say that that's something that we need to look harder at. So certainly we will be looking at that. Sponsorship and other avenues of gathering some revenue. But I guess my point to you from the other side of it is that, you know, you're already taking rates from people to promote Rotorua, people come to Rotorua, and to my mind that the forest is a key way of doing that, and it shouldn't be forgotten, even if it's just for a year.
Yep, and we acknowledge the complications of sponsorship in the privately owned land as well. We have one more question from Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I guess my question concerns the relationship between the Trails Trust and iwi, and I wonder if Councillor Waru perhaps and Councillor Maxwell can help me. My understanding is if these guys can get their heads together and come up with some brainstorming ideas, as we've seen today, find ways to make this a self-funding and carry on mountain biking into the future in a self-funding way, they'll end up with a much better budget than even we're able to offer them, and get a long-term plan rolling.
So what's the question specifically, in fairness to the submitter?
Well, I guess it's almost a question to Councillor Waru, actually. Are you able to
Okay, we'll take that conversation offline.
Okay.
We are out of time.
Can I just answer the direction though?
Yes, go on, David.
Yeah, we're certainly looking at those things, and we appreciate the iwi contribution, and I think there is more work that can be done there. I guess my point is, if we go to people who run businesses in town and hotels and whatever and say, hey, we're looking for sponsorship for the forest, and they say to us, look, the council's already taking rates for this, what do we say to them? We say, yeah, well, they are. We know that they are. And why is that rate money not going onto the forest to a level that's required to maintain it to the level that it needs to be at?
Thank you, David, and thank you also for raising the important work volunteers do, but they can't do forever. So thank you for your submission.
Thanks very much, Your Worship and councillors. I really do appreciate your efforts.
Anna Morrison and Kirianne Hancock. Kia ora kōrua.
Tēnā koe e te maraikura o te rā tēnā koutou katoa, taku whanaunga, taku ankara, rawi ki te kiti o korua kanohi, hari koe tēnei pō. Ka re kore kei te ngenge haere koutou. Kei te mōhio au hoki he uawa ki te noho kei konei, me nā he kapua pauri kei rungi te wahau nā reira. Tēnei te mihi korua o te rā kia koutou. Aye. Kia ora everybody, my name's Kirianne Hancock. Today I'm presenting to you as a member of the board of the Te Kotahitanga o Ngāti Whakaue Assets Trust. To my right is Anna Morrison, and she's here as our manahautu, or the CEO of Ngāti Whakaue Assets Trust. So just a little bit about the trust to refresh your memories. The trust was established in 2009 for the purpose of receiving, growing and distributing the Ngāti Whakaue portion of accumulated rentals from the Central North Islands Forest Land Collective Settlement Act 2008. We've got around, at the 2018 census, over 8,000 who whakapapa to Ngāti Whakaue, but I also know that with Councillor Maxwell's mokopuna, Councillor Waru's tamariki, and another one coming from our maraikura, I'm expecting that that number's going to go skyrocketing once our 2023 census results come in. Today, we, as a representative of Te Kotahitanga o Ngāti Whakaue Assets Trust, we just want to come and speak to our submission and to acknowledge that the landscape that we're in, we understand the tightening of the belt. It's something that we're all feeling in all the different portei that we wear. But the key point or that we wanted to kind of promote today through this kōrero is how does that affect Ngāti Whakauia or impact on Ngāti Whakauia, and that's the lens that we're applying to our submission. So there's 3 kaupapa that we just wanted to highlight alongside all the other kōrero in our submission. And actually, before I do that, I think it's really important just to, to note that in order to have a prosperous community and district, considerations of equity is something that we actually need to bring into our decision making, and that's to avoid further disadvantage to those that systems, processes, and policies already disadvantage. So, it's no secret to any of us that the statistics, especially in the social well-being sphere, it's not as great for those who are iwi Māori and for Ngāti Whakauia specifically. So 3 things points that we wanted to just highlight that are most important to us. Fees and charges for Māori land. So we would like the cap for Māori freehold owners to maintain. The development of Māori-owned land is critical to the growth of Rotorua in the district, and our proposal prevents addition of more barriers to development. Do no harm to Māori tourism is our second point, and our tourism reputation. Through maintenance of natural resources and assets, we have a partnership relationship with iwi, and in our case, with Titokorangi and Whakarewa and Central Parks and Reserves. The third point that we'd like to highlight for you today, and again in addition to the rest of our submission, is in regards to the Economic Development Fund. So underutilisation is not a proxy for need. Often communities, in particular Māori, do not access government funding for a variety of reasons. Given the economic conditions, we recommend freezing for a year or for a period, but not removing. So those are 3 points that we wanted to raise today. Yes, komatu.
Thank you. We have 1 minute if there are any questions. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. You were here for the previous presenter, who I see in your presentation here, your assets include the Central North Island forest lands. That's the lands that the mountain biking is on, is that right?
Yes, and we also hold investments in Kangaroo timberlands through the Kākono LLP.
Okay. Are you the right people to talk to the Trails Trust people about how to...
Yeah, there's a wider discussion here around just the settlement legislation itself and the restrictions that come along with that. Absolutely, there should be a conversation, but I think it's really important to note that we're here representing one trust. There's also mana whenua, hapu voices, and many other that need to be layered into those conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. In your submission, one thing really jumped out at me. Obviously, I'm keen on keeping the rates as low as possible. Review equity of rates between low and upper CV. What do you mean by that, please?
So that was just when we looked at the table, it did appear on percentage-wise that the lower valued lands had a higher increase percentage-wise than the upper, and we just were suggesting that it's important to always put an equity lens across those analyses just to check if there's any unintended negative consequences on those with lower houses or properties with lower rates valuation.
Thank you very much. That is time, but we really appreciate the detail at which you addressed all of, well, very many of the points in the annual plan within your written submission, so kia ora kōrua.
Tēnā koutou. Kia ora koutou.
Our next submitter is Nori Wynn. Welcome, Nori. And for our submitters, just a reminder, we have 5 minutes. I'll give you a polite 30-second warning if needed. Otherwise, you'll hear about that 5 minutes.
It'll take 1 minute.
Okay, it's going to be a great 1 minute.
I don't want to... I know. I don't want to see the Ngātaha baskets go from the village. I like them there. They look attractive. Everybody wants them to stay. So I am volunteering to organise, if you're going to disband the, take away the money to do them, then I am volunteering to organise a group who will do them. So I do think that probably the price of doing the Nongataha baskets is minuscule in the, in the overall scheme of the budget. But I'm a retired school teacher, I'm organised. I've actually been helping do baskets because at Otrahonga, there's a woman who organises them there voluntarily. And so I've actually been there and worked with her for the day, and I've been in touch with her, and she will give us all the help and information we need to do it. And yes, so I don't want to see the baskets go. That's me, I'm done.
Thank you very much, Noreen. We appreciate your passion and your efficiency of your submission. Perhaps you've also mentioned in your written submission we can use the Ngongotaha landscape supplies to do baskets. So you're sort of saying this really could be like a buy local for local approach in Ngongotaha.
Well, it could be, except that I've just been out there today and there is something happening with that business, so he can't actually commit at the moment.
Yeah.
And also he says there's all sorts of OSH rules and regulations about a group of gardeners going into the place and actually doing the basket. So maybe it's going to be at my place we're going to do them, so it's easier. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's ways and means around.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you for your generous offer. I have heard through the grapevine that Anita Martelli from Ray White would like to help sponsor them. So you might like to talk to her as well.
Perfect, perfect.
Thank you.
There you go. We solve problems at this table too.
I just, if it is going to become a voluntary job, I'd be good to talk to somebody one-on-one or something, because there'd be quite a lot of organisation happen.
Noreen, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we will be in touch.
That's all right.
I think you just became our favourite submitter, by the way. Now, our next submitter, and no pressure following that, but our next submitter is Adrian Hall.
Can't follow that. Especially considering I was going to say no notes, no presentation, and I was expecting a small room with a few people in it, not this grand stage. So I hardly know what to say. Right, I'm here because I'm concerned that the council might be withdrawing funding from the arts. I come from a music perspective. I've been teaching since I was 15. I've played in the Rotorua Symphonic Band. I'm still teaching now. It's why I'm late tonight. Work full time, but I have actually stopped playing with the Rotorua Symphonic Band because of the arson of our band rooms and the need to find accommodation. We had hoped for the 3 bands in town. I digress, but that's largely what prompted me to be here, because I can see things arts-wise and music-wise in particular just disappearing. We're working in really harsh conditions, and even before the band rooms were burnt down, they were horrible to play in. It was really ghastly, and I don't know how we retained the membership that we did, but we're getting new ones on board, which is testament to the importance of the feeling that playing music and providing music gives to people. So yes, infrastructure is vital, but you can have all the infrastructure in the world, but if your people aren't happy and able to be creative, then their minds go, their emotions go, they're not really good people to have in your town. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your submission, your time. Were there any questions? Councillor Lee, are you comfortable taking questions?
Oh, yes, sure.
Fantastic. We've got 3 minutes left anyway, so. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Adrian, we had the pleasure of meeting at the downstairs, didn't we?
Yes, yes.
And you mentioned that there's 3 bands
Yes.
that were sharing the same room that were burnt down.
There were 2 sharing the one that we were in, the Rotorua Brass Band and the Symphonic Band. And the Symphonic Band has now been offered and has taken another day in the Highland Pipe Band room, so they do have somewhere to practice, but it's just as awful. The room is just as awful as the one that we were in collectively before. So ideally, we really want dedicated space where we could hold concerts, all three bands could practice. I have looked around town. In fact, I went to Parkside today to see if they had somewhere for us, and it looks sort of promising, but there's still lots of problems with that. Ideally, a space for all three bands, and that's what all of the bands have discussed. So, yeah.
There you go, colleagues. Put the thinking caps on.
Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te marukura, tēnā koe Adrian. Musician to musician, I love your kōrero. It's really good to hear, and you are right. Arts and music in particular to me is huge. It's the beating heart of any community, really. So I've read your submission, and I've also just listened to you have a kōrero. Just in terms of aside from the three bands, the two bands playing in the horrible setting, what would you like to see? If I could ask you one thing, what would that be?
Oh, I imagine if we could all get together in one decent building where we had a safe space for all of the big instruments, like the ones that were lost in the fire, and which the brass band and the symphonic band used. There would then also be a space for teaching. I mean, we have taught, both bands have taught in those band rooms to a degree, but if we had somewhere decent for especially young people to go, that would be a dream. That really would be the dream. Yeah.
Thank you. And final question from Councillor.
Play on, Adrian. Play on.
Thank you, Worship. Yes. Have you considered the Casablanca?
It would be too small for us.
Really?
Yeah, we've got 25 players as a start. We need chairs, we need music stands, we need places to store. Like we had an orchestral marimba, 4 timpani, the tubular bells, the huge bass drum, and a whole lot of sheet music, a whole library of sheet music that have been collected over about 30 years, all gone. We need places for that. So it's a good suggestion, but one that I did dismiss fairly early on. I have been talking to Glenna Sarang about, all of the ideas that she has, and I'm chopping them off one by one, going there and seeing what there is. But really the only way it's looking we can make the Rotorua Symphonic Band work is to find an existing place that we can hire one day a week and occasionally for a Saturday or Sunday for a concert, which is not frustrating.
Look, Adrian, thank you very much. That is our time, but we really appreciate you giving us your time to come and present today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll bring my bag back to City. I can play the bag. She was the last one on the list. That's great. Rob, you play trying.
Thank you. I know.
Ask me the question. There's a lot of corridor going on about that. The three groups. Yeah, but I think it's.
We don't. Unfortunately not. We don't have the submitters present, but it is very likely that they will turn up. So the 7:30, we have a 7:30 in person that's likely to turn up, and a 7:35 on Zoom. The Zoom one is our final one. Adrian was scheduled as our 7:55. So, yes, but we will wait. We will. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll, just in case someone turns up, we will wait, but we are expecting our 7:30 in 15 minutes, but definitely that 7:35 and then we'll wrap up. So fortunately, we're not going all the way to 8 o'clock, so we're almost there. Thank you very much. So take a short break, definitely, and we'll see if anyone turns up, otherwise we'll probably have a break until 7:30.
Jury service.
In my oral submission, the paper between us, there is a length of harakeke paper bigger than a door in anybody's house. I've imagined it rolled from where I am to the front of your seats and chairs at council. As members who are currently elected on behalf of the community, I'm really happy to make my submission today. This paper evokes for me both the paper which will record your decisions for the annual plan 2023-24 and the paper used by members of our community to share their thoughts with you about how they see those proposed changes. A local community group in 2022 fundraised to hold a workshop on harakeke, or flax paper making. The workshop was held at the Arts Village on a sunny Saturday morning in October. Almost 30 people arrived to share their interest in learning how to do this. The group was met by passionate people, including the South Island inventor who had made the swamp machine. The machine takes the hard work out of preparing the flax. It saves thousands of hours and prevents the development of arthritic wrists. The resulting pulp was added to water in a huge bar. The bars were then used to make paper sheets. The group comprised of people of various ethnicities, Māori, European and Asian. The eldest, a renowned local artist in her 80s, and the youngest, an 11-year-old homeschooled student who's passionate about making paper and little books of stories and poetry. People had travelled from all over the Bay of Plenty, including 3 young Māori wahine who came together from Whakatane. During demonstrations, people stood shoulder to shoulder and enjoyed the creative fresh air opportunity together. They were shown how to mix the pulp and water, what proportions worked best, and how to take the heavy frames of various sizes through the water bar. They moved the frames into the sun on the venue driveway and left them out to dry before carefully peeling off the newly formed paper. As the day progressed, these folks, who were strangers at the start of the day, worked together to mix the bar solutions, lift the frames, and roll up the paper from the frames when it was ready, so that the frames could be reused by others. Piles of paper gradually grew in height and size, ready to be allocated equally amongst all those present as parting gifts. Along the way, there were conversations about death and dying, and how this harakeke flax itself could be used in rituals undertaken at the end of someone's life. The focus, enthusiasm, and energy amongst all of those present. No one left the workshop early. The opening provided by this community group for people to come together and share time, space, and an activity is the glue that keeps our community together. I urge you to think before you make decisions about cuts to community funding support for not-for-profit groups and the events and activities that take place in our community. These are the glue that keep our community together. These times together as strangers and leaving as friends are often unnoticed and unappreciated by those who make decisions on our behalf. I urge you to look at the capital budget and see what could be cut there, rather than making all of the proposed changes that will impact so hugely on our community. We need more of what unites us all, rather than restrictions which divide us, in Rotorua and in New Zealand 2023 and beyond. 2 reviews our group received after the workshop on our Facebook page. Local female Māori artists. I absolutely loved this workshop. Not only the wonderful and fascinating process of making harakeke paper, but the connecting and pulling together of like-minded community spirit. Thank you so much. This was a fabulous workshop. Thanks to the Trust for hosting Mark Lander, paper guru in this kaupapa. Hopefully there will be more harakeke paper making workshops again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was bang on your 5 minutes. It was beautifully said, so I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but we really thank you for joining us at this time, and we wish you well and a speedy recovery.
Thank you all. Go well.
Thank you, Anne. I think Greg may just be checking whether our next submitter is downstairs. Keith was scheduled to present at 7:30. I'd just like to give him perhaps 10 minutes if we wait until 7:40. Just in case. Thank you.